Katie from Chords Records. Welcome to my channel. And I'll take this opportunity to say thank you to all my subscribers. And if you like this video, if you could subscribe and hit the thumbs up and notification bell and all that, that'd be great. I've hit 5,000 subscribers and 100 videos. I don't normally talk about that sort of stuff, but it's I feel so proud of it. And I know so many of you have been doing it so much longer than I have. I've been doing it for a couple of years, but I have learned so much from the vinyl community, and I just really appreciate all your help. So you've clicked on the thumbnail for a reason. I got the most incredible gift this week in the mail of around about 16 albums, all folk, early British folk, US folk, early 70s folk, early Canadian folk. And it was a gift from a lovely guy called Glenn in Australia, who noticed that I really liked Kate and Anna McGaragle in one of my videos and said, I have one, can I send it to you for free as a gift? And I said, that would be so lovely. And one thing led to another, and he sent me kind of the he's getting rid of all of his collection. This was just a box that was sitting around, and he allowed me to go through it, and he sent them to me for the postage cost of $40. And to understand how incredible that is, apart from being gifted anything, it costs about $60 to get a new album in Australia. So for the cost of $40, he posted all these to me as a gift. The first one I'm going to show you is an incredible bootleg from Tim Buckley from 1968 and 1970 radio broadcasts, the BBC and Danish radio broadcast. By Le Disques du Porcupine, I guess the disc of porcupine. That's the kind of the hype sticker that they have there. And this was released, I think, in around about 1980. Fantastic bootleg. And all Glenn's records were beautifully kept. They're all near mint. The actual vinyl. Some of the covers have a little bit of ring wear, but most of them are beautifully kept. They're kept in, the vinyl is kept in kind of polylined sleeves, and I just feel really lucky. So that's the first one. And this was obviously a classic bootleg with a plain label. Right, the next one I was so thrilled to get, the cult 1971 film Silent Running. And I collect soundtracks. I have started quite a small collection, but I love them, of the kind of early science fiction sci-fi films. I love the illustrations. I love the early 70s sci-fi vibe. And this album, this film is an environmental film about a man, a biologist or an ecologist that looked after kind of the last remaining specimens of plants after humans had killed off everything in a dome, and it sort of goes off into space, and he has these two robots who help him, Huey and Dewey, as a nod to Disney. And the reason this was included in the collection was because of the two songs by Joan Baez, sung by Joan Baez, the title song, Silent Running, and then on side one, Rejoice in the Sun. So she kind of opened side one and side two. And so I was really, really thrilled to get that album. But look at that artwork. Isn't that gorgeous? And the actual vinyl label it's on MCA. Beautiful. You can see how kind of shiny that is. It's just not a mark on it. So that was Silent Running. And then I got how many, 3 or 4 Loudon Wainwrights, the first 2 Atlantic albums, and then a couple of later ones, and they're all near mint. I absolutely love Loudon Wainwright. I love Kate and Anna McGaragle. I love Martha Wainwright. Rufus Wainwright. I just, I've seen all of them in concert. I've got signed material from them. I've got a signed set list from Martha Wainwright. Loudon Wainwright came to a folk festival in the Blue Mountains here where I live, and it was a small, maybe 100 people at this festival about 10 years ago, and he brought his, no, it was probably longer, 15 years ago, and he brought his young daughter, who was a half-sister of Martha, and Lucy Wainwright was her name. And it was one of her first times performing live, and it was such a privilege to see these two perform. So the albums I got were his first two albums on Atlantic. So the first one being the self-titled. This is the Monarch pressing. And you can see beautiful condition, and the Atlantic label. I just love him so much. He's got re-listening to some of this music made me think of Martha Wainwright, and you can really see the kind of legacy. And if you're interested in them, Martha Wainwright's written a memoir, and it's just brilliant. And she doesn't hold back on her relationship with her parents, who obviously split at quite a young age, and her relationship with her brother. Really fantastic memoir. Then the second Atlantic album 2, appropriately named, also on Atlantic. And then a couple of later albums, T-Shirt and Final Exam, and these were both US pressings on Arista. He's got a very, I love his larrick, what you call in Australia, I guess, larrikin. He's a cheeky bugger. And I kind of really like that. And then there's this album, T-Shirt's a bit rocky. I absolutely love this album. And of course, it starts with Bicentennial, talking about the Bicentennial celebrations, ends with the big fireworks. It's just a really bluesy, rocky number. I really love this album. And look at the condition of this. And then the final Loudon Wainwright album that I received as part of this, also on Arista, was the Final Exam. So quite sort of similar, and you can see this is probably a return. It's got a couple of them had hole punches or cut-offs. But the albums themselves kept in beautiful condition, hardly been played, very well looked after. And then the album that started the conversation with Glenn, the worst album cover in the history of album covers, Pronto Monto by Kate and Anna McGaragle. Isn't that just the most awful album cover? It's 1978, but you could say, isn't that an 80s album cover? And look at that. But this, they were dropped after this album. It didn't fulfill the expectations of the record label. And I didn't have this one, and I do collect them all. So I was thrilled to get it from Glenn. Oh no, that's right. It was a German pressing, German or Netherlands pressing. I enjoy this album. I just love them, but it's not as good as their early material. Obviously they're two sisters from Canada, if you don't know who they are, Canadian folk musicians. And the Kate McGaragle is the mum. The late Kate McGaragle is the mum of Martha Wainwright and Rufus Wainwright. Right, and I also had a little surprise in there of this beautiful, cute New Zealand single of Kate and Anna McGaragle, Cried for Us, and the B-side, Love. Oh no, the A-side would be Love Over and Over, and the B-side would be I Cried for Us, which was a fantastic little surprise. Okay, so that that was the first kind of half, and the next half is very a kind of early folk artist that I'm not super familiar with, and this is an area that I'm really starting to learn about, and I'm just fascinated by. And I've learned a lot from the vinyl community in the UK, who have, you know, there's a few, another fat bearded man, particularly. Really into that fantastic and very obscure folk and early folk music, who has really kind of educated me, the videos they all do on the British folk. So I'm going to start with a compilation album in almost near mint condition called The Bunch. Oh, it's actually not a compilation album. It's more like a supergroup album. And I knew nothing about it. I'm sure you guys know about it. It's got people like Richard Thompson, Linda Thompson, she was known as Linda Peters then, Sandy Denny. And the album, the band, The Bunch, was brought together by Ted Lucas, who was, I think was Trevor Lucas, who I think was Australian and went over to the UK and formed this group of British folk musicians called The Bunch. And they just performed old school rock and roll. So let me just read you some of the music. Crazy Arms, That'll Be the Day by, Buddy Holly. Don't Be Cruel, Elvis Presley. The Locomotion, the Jerry Coffin, Carole King song. It goes on and on and on. Hank Williams, Phil Everly, Chuck Berry, and Learning the Game, the great Buddy Holly song at the end. And it's these British folk musicians' interpretations of those songs, and it was the only album they ever did, and it's just brilliant. So you can see this is an original. This was a 1980. I think this was a reissue. Yeah, this was a 1986 reissue. Originally came out in the early 70s on Carthage. Mint condition. Really, really great album. And if you know about these albums or can share more kind of on them or give me some history, I'd appreciate that. Just drop it in the comments. This is probably one of my favorite albums of the collection. It's a Canadian folk musician called David Whiffen, Coast to Coast Fever. That I love that photo of him. This is, when I first started listening to this, I was thinking, he's described as folk, but for me, he's almost country, but he's Canadian, 1972 or 1971. This is an original album, original US version. It's got a tip-on jacket on the United Artists Records label. Let me just show you the vinyl there. And it's but what it turns out to be, for me, it's not folk as much as more like James Taylor, but I guess he is folk, isn't he? Beautiful, beautiful music. He's the writer of everything. He plays guitar. And you can hear James Taylor in almost country music. It's almost like a country musician, but it's just beautiful. I love it. And again, another beautiful condition album, and a gift to discover this artist for me who I didn't know. So that's David Whiffen, Coast to Coast Fever, from Canada, early 70s album. Then this is an Australian only compilation of Donovan. Of course I'm familiar with Donovan. I don't have any of his albums, and I'm going to rectify that. This is a best of 2 LP single sleeve album. I'll show you the track list if you can read that. Includes Catch the Wind, Atlantis, Hurdy-Gurdy Man, Sunshine Superman, etc., etc. Again, beautiful condition. A really good introduction on vinyl to Donovan for me. As I said, it was an Australian only release. So happy to get that. Right, the next one was a double album of a live concert of Pete Seeger and Arlo Guthrie from, I think, 1975. And this fantastic gatefold photograph, if you can see that in the camera shot. As I said, a double album, and it's them kind of taking turns with their music. So that was just a fun kind of live album to get. I love concert albums. They're hit or miss, and I probably don't listen to them much, but I just like having them. For me, they're very archival of a moment, a kind of a timestamp, and so I really like having them. And this was on reprise. This is an Australian pressing. Right, now we go back to some British folk and an artist called David Swarbrick from Fairport Convention, who was he the lead of Fairport Convention, or at least one of the main characters in that British folk band. Probably started the British folk revival, maybe, am I getting that right? In the late 60s, and he had a solo career as well, and I don't have any of this stuff, and I just thought, you know, what you could probably pick these up for $5 or $10, and so I just thought it'd be nice to just have that in my little folk collection that I'm forming. And the first one I received, or I'll talk about, is this Lift the Lid and Listen. Obviously, or not obviously, you may not know, Dave Swarbrick was a fiddle player or a violin player, and I think probably influenced a lot of future folk fiddle or violin players that came after him. And I would never buy this album, don't know him. I know Fairport Convention, really like them, but I would never buy an album that one looked like this, because I do judge a book by its cover, and I just didn't know his name, and now I do, and I've rectified that, and I'm going down deep diving. I know that's probably very embarrassing to many of you, but I do have massive blank spots in my knowledge of British folk music. And this is instrumental, and I really, really enjoyed this album. I was surprised at how, it's not something that I would put on often, but I certainly had it going on in the background and just loved it. And again, the same thing happened, and I'll just show you, it's on this Sonnet. It's a original on this Sonnet, beautiful label. Absolutely love this label. Don't know the label. As I said, massive gap in my knowledge. So the other one, also on the Sonnet label, was the Dave Swarbrick and Friends album, the Silid album. Don't know what that means. It might be, is it Welsh or Celtic or something? And the cover, this is an interesting cover. I really love this painting. And the back cover there, and not dissimilar. I don't know who the friends are that it refers to on the album. I don't know much about the album at all, except to say that it was very similar in its tone to the other album. Here are the friends: Beryl Marriott, Roger Marriott, Alan Robertson, Bruce Rowland, Dave Pegg, and Simon Nicol. Recorded by Nick Kinsey at Livington Studios, England. It's in absolute perfect condition. So that was just some nice kind of surprise folk for me to get, given that I'm not familiar with him at all. And then finally, I love Christmas, and I love Christmas albums, and I've got quite a big collection, and I do a Christmas video each year of my Christmas albums. I will repeat that. You can move on by if you're not interested, but I particularly picked this one out of Glenn's collection because of that, and it's John Fahey Christmas guitar. So this was the folk contribution to my Christmas collection. John Fahey being the American guitar finger-picking guitarist, I guess. And he did, this is called Volume 1. He did in 1968 or 69, he had a Christmas album, which isn't this, but I think this takes from it. I think this is a bit later, so I think this might be 1976. Oh no, 1982 actually. And it's just his interpretations of classic Christmas music like Joy to the World, What Child Is This, We Three Kings, but it's very kind of laid back and beautiful and not kind of cringe. I really enjoyed this addition to my Christmas collection on the Varick label. And then finally, we have one more that's not folk. And he had a few kind of random jazz albums, and I picked one from that collection to round out this incredible gift. And it is this great box set of Keith Jarrett's solo concerts, Bremen, Lausanne from 1973. It's a 3-volume box set. Doesn't have the booklet in it, but I don't care. The albums feel like they're mint. And I love Keith Jarrett. I love this era of Keith Jarrett. I love the Cohen concerts particularly. So this is from 1973. This is original, and you know, you can pick this up probably for $20 or $30 on Discogs now. Like it's not hard to get, but to be gifted it and I don't have it, I was so thankful. So thank you, Glenn. It's been such a treat receiving these in the mail. There's an expression called VCLT, which is the Vinyl Community Love Train, where people pass on records to other vinyl community members, and I'm so lucky that I've received a few, and this was particularly a special one. So I appreciate that, and I'll make sure that I pay it forward in turn at some point to someone. So thanks very much, and thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy this video. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.